The sun was beginning to set, casting a warm orange glow over the small town. The streets were quiet, but the air inside a little bar at the corner of Main Street was alive with noise and laughter. It was the kind of place where people came after a long day to forget their worries, to talk, to share stories, or simply to enjoy a drink. Tonight, like many other nights, the bar was filled with the sounds of friendly chatter, clinking glasses, and music playing softly in the background. Naomi sat alone at a small table near the back. She wasn't someone who went out much, but tonight she needed to be here. The bar's cozy atmosphere was a good place to clear her mind. Naomi's dark eyes looked around quietly, watching the crowd. Her long black hair fell gently over her shoulders, and she wore a simple shirt and jeans. Her presence was calm, yet there was a strength about her that made people notice even if they didn't know her story. She had been a Marine once, many years ago. It was a part of her life that she did not speak about easily, but it shaped who she was. The time she spent serving her country had taught her many things: courage, discipline, and the value of respect. Though she was no longer in uniform, something about her still carried that strength. As Naomi sipped her drink slowly, a group of bikers entered the bar. Their loud voices and heavy boots changed the atmosphere immediately. The men were big and tough-looking, with leather jackets and chains. They laughed loudly, joking with each other, filling the room with energy. Most people gave them space, not wanting to get caught in their rowdy mood. One of the bikers, a tall man with a thick beard and dark eyes, walked toward the bar. His name was Jake. Jake was known in town as someone who enjoyed pushing limits, sometimes too much. He wasn't a bad person, but he had a rough edge and he liked to make his presence known. As Jake moved through the crowd, he didn't notice Naomi sitting nearby. He bumped into her, and in the process his large hand caught the sleeve of her shirt, ripping it cleanly at the seam. Naomi felt the sudden tug but didn't cry out or move away quickly. Instead, she looked up calmly at Jake. For a moment, no one in the bar knew what to say. Some of the bikers stopped talking and the music seemed to lower in volume. Jake looked down at Naomi's torn shirt, then into her eyes. There was something different in her gaze, a quiet strength that stopped him from laughing it off like he usually would. I didn't mean to," Jake said, scratching the back of his neck awkwardly. His voice lost some of its usual confidence. Naomi didn't respond immediately. Instead, she gently lifted her arm, showing a tattoo on her shoulder. It was old and slightly faded, but the symbol was clear: the eagle, globe, and anchor of the Marine Corps. The mark of a woman who had served and sacrificed. The room suddenly fell silent. Even the bikers, who were usually loud and fearless, seemed to freeze. The tattoo was a reminder of something greater than the bar's usual chaos, a symbol of honor, bravery, and respect. Jake's eyes widened. He lowered his hand and took a step back. "I'm sorry," he said again, his voice quieter now. The toughness that usually wrapped around him seemed to melt for a moment. Naomi nodded slowly, her face calm but serious. "Just be careful next time," she said softly. Her words were simple but carried weight. The other patrons in the bar began to look at Naomi differently. She was no longer just a woman sitting alone. She was someone who had faced battles that went far beyond any bar fight or rough encounter. The Marine tattoo told a story that demanded respect. Jake, still a little unsure, nodded and moved away. The tension in the room eased as the music began to play a little louder, and conversations resumed. But something had changed. Some of the bikers whispered among themselves, glancing at Naomi with a new kind of respect. Others, who had been watching quietly, nodded to each other, understanding the unspoken message. This woman was not to be underestimated. Naomi sat back down, folding her hands in her lap. She felt the eyes on her but didn't let it bother her. She was used to being noticed, but rarely like this. She thought about the years she had spent in the Marines, the tough training, the challenges she had faced in faraway places, the friends she had lost, and the strength she had found inside herself. That tattoo was more than ink on skin. It was a badge of who she was and what she had endured. Tonight it had spoken louder than any words could. As the night went on, Naomi finished her drink and prepared to leave. The bar was no longer just a place to escape. It had become a place of quiet respect and connection, even if only for a moment. Outside, the cool night air greeted her as she stepped onto the street. She pulled her jacket tighter around her and took a deep breath. Life was full of unexpected moments, and some difficult, some meaningful. And sometimes a simple tattoo could change everything. The night air was cool and still as Naomi stepped out of the bar and onto the quiet street. The city lights flickered in the distance, and a soft breeze rustled the leaves on the trees lining the sidewalk. Her torn shirt still hung loosely from her shoulder, but she barely noticed. Her mind was replaying the moment inside the bar, the look in Jake's eyes, the sudden silence when her Marine Corps tattoo showed. For Naomi, that tattoo was more than a symbol. It was a reminder of everything she had been through and everything she had survived. It told a story of courage, strength, and determination that few people really understood. But inside that bar, no one had just seen a tattoo. They had seen a woman who carried her past openly and proudly. And that moment had changed the mood completely. Back inside the bar, the bikers had settled down but still whispered among themselves. Jake sat at the corner of the bar, his drink untouched. The other men kept glancing at Naomi's empty seat, talking softly. "What's her story?" One of the bikers, a younger man named Tony, asked quietly. Jake looked up and sighed. "She's one of the Marines," he said. "Used to be. That tattoo, it's not just for show." Tony raised his eyebrows. "A woman Marine? That's rare around here," Jake nodded. "Yeah, and that means she's tough. You don't get that patch without earning it." Others around the bar listened in. The Marine Corps was respected, even if it wasn't often spoken about openly. The men there had all heard stories about Marines, the discipline, the training, the courage. But to see it in person, to witness that silent command for respect, was different. Meanwhile, Naomi walked slowly down the street, thinking about her past. The years she had spent in the Marines were a mix of hard lessons and unforgettable memories. She remembered the early mornings, the long runs, the endless drills that pushed her beyond what she thought was possible. She remembered the bonds she had formed with other Marines, friends who had become like family. Most of all, she remembered the day she got the tattoo. It had been during a deployment overseas. Naomi and her team had faced danger many times, but there was one mission that changed everything. They had been sent into a small village to protect the people from a sudden attack. The situation was tense and the risks were high. During the mission, Naomi had been injured but kept fighting alongside her team. After returning home, she decided to get the tattoo to honor her service and the sacrifices of those she had served with. The ink on her shoulder was a constant reminder that she was part of something bigger than herself. As Naomi walked, her thoughts were interrupted by the soft buzz of her phone. She pulled it out and saw a message from a friend, asking if she was okay after hearing about the incident at the bar. She smiled softly and typed back, "I'm fine, just another night." But the truth was more complicated. The evening had stirred feelings she often kept buried. Being recognized even silently for her past brought a mix of pride and pain. She was proud of what she had done, but the memories were not always easy to face. Back at the bar, the atmosphere had shifted completely. The other patrons, who had been drinking and joking loudly, were now quieter. Some stared at the tattoo that had frozen the room. Others whispered stories they had heard about Marines, about bravery, about women who fought just as hard as men. One man, an older gentleman named Frank, spoke softly to his friend. "That woman's been through a lot," he said. "You don't just wear that tattoo for nothing." His friend nodded. "I've got a nephew in the Marines. It's tough. Discipline like you wouldn't believe." The words floated through the bar and the respect grew. The tattoo had become a symbol not just of Naomi's past, but of the sacrifices many had made. It reminded everyone that beneath the surface, people carry stories that demand honor. Jake finally stood and walked toward the back door, where Naomi had left. He hesitated for a moment, then stepped outside into the cool night air. He saw her walking slowly down the sidewalk. "Hey," he called softly, trying not to startle her. Naomi turned, surprised to see him. He looked different now, less rough, more serious. "I just wanted to say I'm sorry again," Jake said, his voice low. "I didn't mean to tear your shirt, and I didn't realize what that tattoo meant until now." Naomi studied his face. There was no mockery there, no roughness, just honesty. "It's okay," she replied simply. "Accidents happen." Jake nodded and looked down at his boots. "I guess I didn't know much about Marines before tonight, but now I respect it. And you?" Naomi felt a small warmth in her chest. Respect was something she valued deeply, especially after all she had been through. "Thank you," she said quietly. They stood there for a moment, the quiet night wrapping around them. It was a small moment, but it carried a weight neither had expected. The next few days passed slowly for Naomi. The incident in the bar stayed in her mind, but she tried to push it aside. Still, the memory of Jake's apology and the silence that had filled the room kept coming back. She found herself thinking about how much people misunderstood her, and how little they really knew about the lives behind the tattoos and uniforms. One afternoon, Naomi received a message from Jake. It was simple. "Can we talk? I want to learn more." Naomi stared at the message for a long time. She wasn't sure why, but something about the request felt important. She wasn't used to opening up about her past, but maybe this was a chance to change how people saw her. She replied, "Sure, let's meet." That evening, they met again at the same bar, but this time the mood was different. The music was softer and the crowd was smaller. Naomi arrived first, sitting at the table where she had been before. Jake came in a few minutes later, looking nervous but determined. They greeted each other with a simple nod and started talking. At first, the conversation was awkward. Jake asked questions about the Marines, about what it was like to serve, and about the meaning behind the tattoo. Naomi answered slowly, choosing her words carefully. She talked about the hard work, the challenges, and the pride she felt in being part of something greater than herself. She shared some stories about her service, the moments of fear, the moments of hope, and the bonds that never broke. As she spoke, Jake listened with respect and attention. He asked questions not to judge, but to understand. The rough edges of the biker began to soften, replaced by genuine curiosity. By the end of the night, something had shifted between them. The barrier of first impressions had broken down. Jake no longer saw Naomi as just a woman in a bar. He saw a person with strength, history, and heart, and Naomi felt a little lighter. She had shared a part of herself that was often hidden, and it was met not with fear or dismissal, but with respect and understanding. As they left the bar together, the night seemed full of new possibilities. Sometimes the smallest moments, a ripped shirt, a faded tattoo, a simple apology, could change everything. The next morning, Naomi woke up with a quiet feeling inside her. The conversation from the night before kept playing in her mind. It was strange but good. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen, not just as someone with a past, but as a person with stories worth hearing. She stretched and looked at the faint sunlight filtering through the curtains. The day ahead was ordinary, yet something about it felt different. She had opened a small door and she wasn't sure what would come through it. Back in the town, news spread quickly about what had happened at the bar. Stories traveled on whispers and quiet talks. The moment when the biker had ripped Naomi's shirt and the Marine tattoo had frozen the whole bar became something more than just a small incident. It became a symbol. People talked about Naomi differently now. The tough woman with the faded tattoo was no longer just a face in the crowd. She was a symbol of strength, courage, and dignity. Jake, too, found himself thinking about Naomi more than he expected. Usually his days were filled with loud laughter and wild rides with his biker friends. But now he carried a new thought in his mind: respect. He had seen many things in his life, rough nights, hard fights, but he had never met someone like Naomi. The way she carried herself, the calm strength in her eyes, the quiet dignity behind the Marine tattoo, it changed something in him. Later that day, Jake returned to the bar alone. The place was quieter now, the rowdy crowd gone. He sat at the corner and ordered a drink, but his mind wasn't on the glass in front of him. He was thinking about Naomi, her stories, her strength. He looked around and noticed the other patrons watching him. They had heard about what happened, and some gave him curious, respectful looks. Jake realized that what had begun as a mistake had turned into a lesson, not just for him, but for everyone in the bar. Naomi spent the day doing simple things, running errands, visiting the small park nearby, and sitting quietly by the river that ran through the town. The river was one of her favorite places. It was peaceful and reminded her of the times when she had to find calm inside chaos. As she sat on a bench, watching the water flow, her thoughts drifted to the friends she had lost in the Marines. They were always with her, in memories, in her heart, and in the tattoo that marked her skin. She thought about the sacrifices she and others had made. It was not easy to carry those memories. Sometimes they weighed heavy on her soul. But she knew that those memories also gave her strength. That evening, Jake sent Naomi a message. "Can we meet again? I want to understand more." Naomi hesitated for a moment before replying. She wasn't used to letting people in, especially not someone like Jake whose world felt so different from hers. But something in his words felt sincere. "Okay, let's meet," she wrote back. When they met again at the bar, the air between them was softer. The noise of the crowd was like a distant hum, and the two found a quiet corner to talk. Jake looked at Naomi and smiled gently. "I've been thinking about what you said, the discipline, the courage. It's not something I've ever really known." Naomi nodded. "It's hard, but it teaches you a lot about yourself." Jake leaned forward. "I want to know what it really means to be a Marine. Not just the fighting, but the people, the feelings, the sacrifices." Naomi's eyes glistened with a hint of sadness. "It means being part of something bigger than yourself. It means standing for something, even when it's hard. And it means never forgetting the people who count on you." As they talked, the conversation moved beyond the past. Jake shared some of his own stories. How life on the road was tough. How he sometimes felt lost, searching for respect and meaning. Naomi listened without judgment, understanding more than she let on. Their worlds seemed very different, but in that moment, they found common ground, a place where respect and honesty bridged the gap. The bar grew quieter as the night went on. Other patrons watched the two talk, sensing something real and rare between them. Then something unexpected happened. One of Jake's biker friends, a large man named Marcus, approached their table. "Hey," Marcus said, "I just want to say, I respect what you're doing here, Jake, and you, Naomi. It's not often we see this kind of talk." Naomi smiled politely, feeling a warmth she hadn't expected. "Thank you," she said simply. Marcus nodded and walked away, leaving a new energy in the room. As the night ended, Naomi and Jake stepped outside together. The air was cool and quiet, and the stars twinkled softly overhead. Jake looked at Naomi. "I'm glad we talked." "I've learned a lot," Naomi smiled. "Me too." For a moment they stood side by side in silence, sharing a peaceful understanding. Then Jake said quietly, "You're one of the strongest people I've ever met." Naomi looked at him, her eyes soft but steady. Strength comes in many forms. Days turned into weeks, and the quiet respect between Naomi and Jake grew. They continued to meet, sharing stories and learning from each other. Naomi began to see a new side of Jake, the man beneath the tough exterior. Jake discovered the depth behind Naomi's calm strength. The Marine tattoo on Naomi's shoulder remained a symbol, one that had frozen the bar that night, but it had also opened the door to something new. Respect, connection, and understanding. One afternoon, as Naomi and Jake sat by the river, she reached out and touched her tattoo gently. "People see this and think it's just about fighting," she said softly. "But it's about everything I've lived through, the good and the bad." Jake nodded. "And now I see that." "I see you." Naomi smiled, a quiet warmth in her eyes. "Thank you." The story of the ripped shirt and the Marine tattoo was no longer just an incident. It was a reminder for everyone who knew it, that strength, respect, and courage live within people, often hidden beneath the surface, and sometimes all it takes is a moment, quiet but powerful, to change the way we see each other. The days following their quiet conversations marked a subtle but meaningful change for Naomi and Jake. What had started as an accidental encounter at a crowded bar was slowly unfolding into a deeper connection, one built on respect, shared stories, and the courage to open up. The small town was waking to another clear morning, the sun casting soft rays over the familiar streets. Naomi moved through her day with a sense of calm. The past weeks had been challenging in ways she hadn't expected, but they had also brought a new hope. A feeling that maybe, just maybe, she was beginning to heal from years of carrying silent burdens. She had started to let Jake in, not fully, but enough for their connection to grow beyond simple apologies and curious questions. He was different from most people she had met in a long time. Jake didn't pretend to know her world, but he listened with honesty and an open heart. That morning, Jake was waiting outside the small cafe they had agreed to meet at. The place was quiet, a favorite spot for locals who liked to enjoy coffee away from the busier parts of town. When Naomi arrived, she found Jake already sitting at a corner table, his posture relaxed but eager. "Good morning," Jake said with a soft smile. "Good morning," Naomi replied, taking a seat. They ordered coffee and settled into a comfortable silence, sipping their drinks as the minutes passed. Jake, Naomi began after a moment, I want to tell you more about my time in the Marines. Not just the hard parts, but the good, too. Jake nodded, encouraging her without words. Naomi took a deep breath and began to speak. The Marines taught me discipline, yes, but they also gave me family. We weren't just soldiers. We were a team, a brotherhood and sisterhood that looked out for each other no matter what. She smiled softly, remembering the faces of those who had stood by her side during the toughest moments. There were times when everything felt impossible, she continued. But together we found strength. Even in the darkest hours, we never gave up. Jake listened closely, absorbing her words. It sounds like more than just a job. It was who you were. It was, Naomi said quietly. And sometimes it still is. She looked out the window for a moment, then back at Jake. That tattoo on my shoulder? It's a reminder of all that. It's about sacrifice and honor, but also about the people I can never forget. Jake's eyes softened. I didn't realize how much that tattoo meant to you. I just thought it was ink. Naomi smiled sadly. It's never just ink. As their conversation deepened, Jake shared his own story, opening a window into his life that few had seen before. I didn't grow up with a clear path, he admitted. Life was hard. My family wasn't close, and I was always searching for something that would make me feel like I belonged. He ran a hand through his hair, his eyes reflecting years of struggle. That's why I joined the biker group. It was a way to find family, to find respect. Naomi nodded, understanding better than he realized. But even there, Jake continued. Sometimes it felt like I was just fighting to be heard. I didn't know how to show real strength, the kind you have. The two sat in silence for a moment, the quiet buzz of the cafe wrapping around them. Their stories, so different yet connected by pain and hope, had drawn them closer. Naomi reached into her bag and pulled out a small photo. She handed it to Jake. This is my unit, she said. We were a family. Some of us didn't make it back. Jake looked at the photo, seeing the faces of brave men and women who had shared dangers and dreams. They looked proud. They were, Naomi whispered, and I'm proud of them. The connection between them grew stronger with every shared story. It was more than just friendship. It was an understanding, a bond that crossed differences and past hurts. For Naomi, it was healing to speak openly about the past she had kept hidden for so long. For Jake, it was a new lesson in respect and courage, learning that strength was not just loud words or tough looks, but quiet resilience. Days turned into weeks, and their meetings became a regular part of both their lives. Sometimes they met at the cafe, sometimes at the park by the river. They talked about everything: hope, fear, dreams, and the small moments that made life meaningful. One afternoon, as they walked along the riverbank, Naomi stopped and looked at the flowing water. This river reminds me of life, she said thoughtfully. It keeps moving forward no matter what. Sometimes the path is smooth, sometimes it's rocky, but it never stops. Jake smiled, looking at her with newfound respect. I like that. Maybe I can be more like this river. Naomi laughed softly. We all can. That evening, they attended a small gathering in the town, a community event where people came together to celebrate local talent and share stories. Naomi was hesitant at first, but Jake encouraged her. This is a good chance for people to see who you really are, he said. At the event, Naomi felt nervous, but the warmth of the crowd surprised her. People approached her, some recognizing the tattoo, others simply drawn by her calm confidence. A young woman came forward and said, I have a brother in the Marines. Thank you for your service, Naomi smiled, touched. Thank you. That means a lot. The night was filled with laughter and music, and for the first time in a long while, Naomi felt a deep sense of belonging. Jake stayed by her side, proud and protective. As they left the event, Jake looked at Naomi and said, You've changed how I see the world. Naomi smiled. And you've changed mine. Their connection was no longer just about a ripped shirt or a tattoo. It had grown into something real, something that brought light to two lives that had been searching for hope. And as they walked into the quiet night, hand in hand, they knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together. The morning sun rose gently over the town, painting the sky in soft shades of pink and gold. Naomi stood by her window, sipping her coffee and watching the world wake up. A quiet smile touched her lips as she thought about how much had changed in recent weeks. The incident in the bar, the tattoo that had stopped the room, and the conversations with Jake. It all felt like a distant memory now, yet it had opened a new chapter in her life. She was no longer just a woman with a past hidden beneath ink and stories. She was someone who had found connection, respect, and perhaps a chance at something new. Jake was waiting outside when Naomi stepped out. His eyes lit up when he saw her. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning," Naomi replied. They walked together through the quiet streets, the rhythm of their steps in harmony. They headed toward the river, their favorite place. The water flowed calmly, reflecting the clear sky above. It was their place to talk, to dream, and to be real. "Naomi," Jake began as they reached a bench, "I've been thinking a lot about everything, about you, about us." Naomi looked at him, curious but cautious. "I want to be better, not just for myself, but for you. You've shown me a new way to live, with strength, respect, and kindness." Naomi felt warmth in her heart. "That means a lot, Jake," he smiled shyly. "You've helped me see that real strength isn't about being tough on the outside. It's about being honest and open, even when it's hard." Naomi nodded. "It takes courage to change, and I'm ready to try." Over the next few days, Naomi and Jake worked to build something steady. They spent time with each other, sharing simple moments, cooking dinner, walking in the park, talking late into the night. They learned to trust and to lean on one another. For Naomi, it was a healing journey. Years of silence and guardedness began to soften, replaced by hope and the possibility of happiness. For Jake, it was a chance to grow beyond his past, to embrace respect and kindness in ways he hadn't known before. One afternoon, Naomi received a letter. It was from an old Marine friend inviting her to a reunion, a gathering to honor those who had served and to remember those they had lost. Naomi hesitated. The memories were painful but precious. She decided to go, knowing it was important to face her past openly. Jake offered to go with her. "I want to be there for you," he said gently. Naomi smiled. "I'd like that." The reunion was held in a quiet hall decorated with flags and photographs. Veterans and their families gathered, sharing stories, laughter, and tears. Naomi stood among them, feeling both the weight of memories and the strength of community. She spoke with old friends, remembering their shared experiences and honoring their sacrifices. Jake watched her with admiration. He saw the pride in her eyes and the quiet courage it took to be there. After the reunion, Naomi and Jake walked outside, the cool evening air wrapping around them. "Thank you for coming with me," Naomi said softly. Jake took her hand. "Thank you for letting me." They stood together, a silent promise passing between them, of support, respect, and new beginnings. Days turned into weeks, and life continued to grow richer for both of them. The townspeople who had once whispered now nodded with respect when they saw Naomi and Jake together. Their story became a quiet inspiration, a reminder that strength can heal wounds, and respect can build bridges. One evening, as they sat by the river, Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Naomi," he said, his voice steady but full of feeling. "You've changed my life. Will you stay with me as we face whatever comes next?" Naomi's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of joy. "Yes," she whispered. Under the soft glow of the setting sun, they embraced, two souls who had found strength in each other, and a future filled with hope. The tattoo on Naomi's shoulder remained, a symbol of the past, but now it also marked the beginning of a new story. One of love, respect, and the courage to open hearts. Their journey wasn't perfect. There were challenges ahead, moments of doubt and fear. But together they faced each one with honesty and trust. And in the quiet moments, when the world felt heavy, they found peace in knowing they were not alone. The bar where it all began still stood, but the memories of that night were no longer just about a ripped shirt or frozen silence. They were about a woman who carried her past with pride, and a man who learned to see beyond the surface. They were about two people who discovered that real strength lies in respect, understanding, and the courage to start again.